So, thank you. My name's Kate Davis. I am the founder of Meraki People. We work with medium-sized businesses, so generally those from about 30 to 100 million turnover, particularly with founder-led businesses. And we work with them through periods of change. So, intentional growth, M&A, founder exit, those periods where things start to get a bit murky. We work in organizational design and development. So we look at the whole structure of the company as well as developing the people inside it. And I am a firm believer our tagline is nothing great is made alone. I am a very peoply person, but I think this is just it's so foundational that when we're working in silo, nothing works. When we work together, wonderful things happen.
Love that. Nothing great is made alone. Um, okay, and so in the spirit, in the context of M&A, I want to sort of talk about the whole acquisition and disposal process. If we start at the beginning, I think a lot of people focus on, what a company's doing in terms of performance, financial performance. So what's its turnover, what's its EBITDA, what's its da 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 da. And then obviously we start to think about the legal and maybe a touch more of the commercial stuff. But the people side probably gets neglected more than it should. And so can you talk us through your experience and what you think people should be looking at when they're looking at a target business to buy, not just the financials and all the rest of it, but from a people side and maybe a cultural side as well? What should people be looking at before they even start to make an offer on a business?
Yeah, I completely agree with you that unfortunately the people bit gets missed. We look at numbers and we look at performance, but actually what we're missing underneath that is who is creating the performance, who's creating the revenue. And whether you're a service-based business or a product-based business, predominantly in service-based businesses where people are your product, if the people aren't working effectively and they aren't working as well as they could be, their performance isn't going to be as high as it could be anyway. That said, I think it's really important to look at what you're buying into from a people perspective. So yes, all the rest of the numbers are really, really important, but actually do some real due diligence on the people. Look at particularly the senior leadership team. Leaders define the culture, and if the leadership team are not working effectively together, then the rest of the organization will be a series of departments that happen to just share a logo. So look at the leadership team, look at how well they work together, look at some really obvious statistics in terms of people churn, but also in terms of talent churn. People churn is a normal thing and is a healthy thing sometimes. People do outgrow businesses and businesses outgrow people. But where you're losing talent, it doesn't matter where that is in the hierarchy of a company. Where you're losing talent, that's an issue, and that would be a big red flag for me.
Can we just stop there for a second? So how do you just differentiate between people and talent? How are they not the same thing?
Well, I mean, obviously, talent is people, but
Not all
looking
people are talented.
yeah, look, not all people are talented, exactly, and not all people are right for that business as well. That I often talk to people and they say, well, people let themselves out the door if they're not right, which I do agree with. Sometimes they need a little bit of encouragement, but where you're losing senior members of the team because they're feeling like they don't understand what's going on, where there is uncertainty, where you're losing the bright sparks that and however the company is measuring career progression. Indeed, if they are, it's another flag. What's your career progression framework like? And if everybody looks a little bit blank, that's another. It's an amber flag at very least.
Right.
So asking some specific due diligence questions around what are your people metrics? How long do people stay? There's a great thing in loyalty, but also are they overstaying? What are your exit interviews saying? So when people are leaving, why are they leaving? Looking at the what we're talking about is culture, but it's effectively the connective tissue. What's holding the company together, and
Hmm.
what are the things that might be an issue that you might need to resolve? It doesn't mean that you shouldn't buy into that, but at the same time, if you know what you're buying, you can be a lot more clear on what you might need to do in order to get that business back up and running, or working more effectively. The other thing to really look at before you start buying anything is in your own team. So not only what your own leadership team is like, could your leadership team survive without you? If you lift yourself out, and this is particularly as far as founders are concerned. Um, I have a picture on my wall that says I do all my own stunts. And when I speak to a founder for the first time, if they pick up on it and they laugh, it's already a flag for me that we need to do some work. But actually, the founder has been in every seat in the business. They've mopped floors, they've fixed the coffee machine as that business has grown. If the business is still very dependent on you as the founder, you needing to lift yourself out to go and look after another company for a while will create a leadership vacuum. So you need to look at your own company first before you start looking at how are we going to acquire another business? Are we going to merge another business? Which is another big conversation to have.
Well, let's stop there because I don't want to jump around too much, but I do
Mm.
think the point there you've made is really, really important. Is because something that's lived that when you have a small business, you have to do those things. You have to stay behind of an evening and clean the kitchen, and sometimes you've got to clean machines or hoover the whatever. And as you grow, you sort of need to mature, I think is your phrase, to as a leader to adopt different positions. How Obviously we know it's important, but how can people recognize that they're in that kind of trap, for want of a better word, and what steps can they take to improve that situation? Appreciate that I'm trying to distill decades of knowledge into a 2 minute soundbite, but have you got anything that you can kind of talk around there?
Yes, well, I think that the first question I would ask, as I would ask some questions of a founder. When you go on holiday, do you take your laptop with you? How often do you open your laptop? How available are you to your team all the time? And what would happen if, God forbid, something actually happened to you and you were laid up in hospital for a couple of weeks? And usually the look on their face tells me enough.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
uh, and they will always tell me a story about how when something happened or when X, Y, and Z. Um, and it is still your business, so you're never going to separate yourself so completely from the business. A founder was telling me the other day about he was being frustrated about another member of his team actually not wanting to be as engaged as he wants to be. There was a little bit of a reframe to think about there, but he told me about when he was sitting at his son's bedside. His son wasn't very well. They'd had to take him into A&E. Thankfully, all was okay, but he was answering emails, sitting waiting there. And I said, well, you can't expect everybody to be doing that. And I would be asking yourself why you were doing that. Could nobody else be your guardian? Could nobody else be your gatekeeper to say, actually, Andy's not available this afternoon. Anything you need can come through me. It's a simple thing. But if that's still happening, if if everything is still leading up to I often talk about a leadership team as head and shoulders. You as the founder, you as the CEO, MD, whatever the title is, are the head, and your leadership team are your shoulders. If your shoulders are weak, they're not carrying the weight of the rest of the body of the rest of the company. And or if they are strong but you're not letting them do the job, which is often another case, then you end up with a pain in the neck and a bottleneck that you are the biggest liability in your business. So look at the strength of your team, look at how well they are working together, how well you are working with them, and are you letting them do their job, or are you still wanting to be fingers in all the pies?
How
um,
do you, sorry, how does a leader do that, or a business owner do that? How do they make sure, A, that they're finding the right talent, and then B, that they're giving enough responsibility and autonomy and stuff to that talent?
mm. So this is where we're looking at kind of organizational design. And again, particularly with a founder-led business, businesses grow quite organically. If you think about, so many of my clients have businesses where the rest of their SLT are people they went to university with, or their brother-in-law, or in all sorts of people that they are, good people that they have collected over the years. But are they all doing the job that they need to be doing, or have they just morphed into the role that was necessary at the time? And so I will often get people to do a little, almost sort of a management consultant exercise on their own business, is look at their org chart, take every name off it, including their own, and then look at it and say, right, if I, in 2 years' time, I want to be at X million or X times wherever we are, if we want to be doing this in the future, what do I need? So literally just looking at as a blank org chart, what are the roles I need? And then looking at, this is where we are now, this is where I need to be. And then trying to backfill. So pick up the people again and put them back on the org chart. Does that person actually sit in that role? Is that something they could develop into? If the initial answer is no, could we get some training for them? Can we get some leadership development training for them, or job specific training? Or actually, are they just not right for that role anymore? And then it's, are they right for another role, or actually is it time for them to move on?
Hmm.
The other really key thing, because a leadership team is a team. It is a team of leaders. So they have to be good individually, but they have to be good together. And one question that I will often ask of a team if I'm running an away day is, I want you to picture your team. Think about the people in it. Think about what you do every day. Now tell me, is that your department team? And most people would go, yeah. Not the team in this room. And they go, oh. If their top team isn't the team that they're sitting with, then you have a fractured team. You have a series of departments that share a logo.
This is getting more into leadership now, which is a good route to go down, because I think a lot of people are gonna, this is gonna be a problem that a lot of people can resonate with. Okay, so let's picture this leadership team, and let's say that it's fragmented. You've got good people, but not necessarily a team of people. They're not operating effectively together. How do you solve that problem? How can you bring people together as a team rather than just a series of high performing individuals or low performing individuals? And let's talk about how we weed people out later on, but
Yes.
we'll get
Yeah.
to that in a second, I think.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting one. I think, again, one of the questions that I would ask somebody is, is going back to basics, your mission, vision, and values. First of all, I see how much their eyes roll when I say that, because there are lots of people who think that is stuff that goes on the wall and is completely unnecessary. Whereas actually looking at, well, okay, what's your vision for the company? If their answer is a financial target, then that's a really good indicator that the team are not that a team are fractured, because they don't have something that unifies them.
Hmm.
Um, I know a number of CEOs of decent sized businesses, 50, 60 million pound businesses, where the vision is in their head and they're really clear on it. And then there is a silence. Well, does anybody else know? Well, they're just doing their day job.
Okay, so there's two questions there. Number one, how do you, or how do good people, I suppose, find a vision that is not just financial, but is worthy, that a team can gel behind? And
Mm.
then the second part of the question is, how do you get people to move towards the same goal and move towards that vision? What actions and steps and daily
Mm.
activities can you take to do that?
So I think in terms of thinking about mission and vision, I like to get people to tell me the story of why they exist, because some people have just spotted a gap in the market, and that's great. But why that gap in the market? Some people are much more purpose driven, and have just kind of forgotten that they need to communicate that to people. Some people will have incredible stories that have never shared that with their leadership team. That they are a computer software company or they're a construction company, and mission, vision, values is irrelevant because we build houses, don't we? Yeah, but why do you build houses? Why do you build houses, not flats? Why do you build? Well, why do you build? Why do you do residential rather than commercial, or whichever way around it
Hmm.
is?
Hmm.
Tell me the story about why you are, and if you didn't exist, what would happen? What is it that you do differently to the other people? So one of my clients who's in construction, and he is really passionate. Really, it really winds him up when he's dealing with other companies, and he's actually decided to not work with some of the bigger guys because he can't bear the business practices that they operate under. And so he said, my lads go on site and they are problem solvers. And if it's not their problem, they'll still get involved and see how they can. Well, if we move this thing over 3 inches, would that help you? All right, let's move that thing three. They are looking to collaborate with everybody around them.
Hmm.
And so his mission is to change the standards of the construction industry, which is a huge. They're at three
Yeah.
million turnover. They're a tiny team, but he only works with people who work like him. And the more he talks about it, the more people go, God, I know, it drives me nuts as well. And so he's kind of creating a mini movement almost. The people who work for him believe in that. And so therefore they want to stay around. And if they don't
Hmm.
like the way that he operates, they go pretty quickly. And he's a smaller business, but it still works all the way across that. So getting people to tell me the story, or tell each other the story about why the business exists. What is it? Why do you get out of bed in the morning, apart from the fact that we pay you a salary? Because you could be getting a salary anywhere. Why do you come to work? What are the things you're most proud about this company? Where can you see it going in 2 or 3 years' time? And actually just get people to live it a little bit. If you live in numbers and spreadsheets and targets, you kind of miss the fun bit.
Yeah, it
Um,
becomes a bit devoid, doesn't it, of
it does,
fun?
yeah. And actually, when people first come to me, there are usually two reasons why they come to me. Even if it is very specifically, we're looking to acquire a company, or I'm looking to exit, retire, whatever it is. I need some help and support. When they tell me about what's going on, it's still either the I'm still doing all my own stunts, or it's just no fun anymore. More often than not, it's just not fun anymore, which
Yeah, I see
means
that a lot.
I'm so tired and I'm pulling everybody, and I don't know, everybody seems to have lost the energy. And I often get asked, particularly post COVID and with current economic and political stuff going on, do you find is it everybody? Is everybody tired? And I think, gosh, we really need to breathe some life back into this lot. We really need to get them excited again about what they do,
Yeah.
and why they do it. And when you start to do that, a great client who was one of these people who said, our vision is X million turnover. Tell me the story. And he told me this incredible story about why they exist and why it's really important to them that they deliver on their customer value. That he then went to tell his leadership team, who went, we'd never heard that story. Why have we never heard that story? That's a brilliant story. I'm going to tell that story. 2 weeks later, they were hosting a big event for potential clients, schmoozing, taking them around Mercedes-Benz World, blah 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 blah. And normally he would lead with his senior tech guy, who would stand up and say, "Our product does these things." He's like, I'm going to give it a go. And he stood up and he told the story about why it's important to him that his product works. And he had a queue of people before the tech guy had even come up, a queue of people as he came off stage saying, can we have a coffee? It's really important. So getting people unified behind a mission, a
Hmm.
vision, and values. Values are not something you stick on your wall, or as I will often hear, oh, we did that recently. Sharon, can you find out where we filed that?
Yeah.
Um, or it's on our website, but I can't really remember them. It Values are the standards of behavior you live by or you walk by. What do you expect of your team? What can your team expect of you? What can your customers expect of you? What are the things you actually believe in? Those are your values, and those are so core to who you are. And I know we've sort of gone down a leadership route, but actually, if you think about that in terms of a merger or an acquisition, really getting into the root of that with whichever company you're looking at is also really important, because if their value set and your value set don't mix, there is no point in trying to merge them because it's just not going to work.
Hmm.
You cannot merge teams, you cannot merge people, you cannot also merge customer or client bases because they're buying two different versions of a story. It's that Maya Angelou quote that I always misquote, so I do apologize. But it's not what you tell people; it's how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And we as buyers buy into brands. Brand loyalty comes from how a brand makes you feel about them, and that's also then back into their mission and vision values. So internal external culture, if those two don't match with the company that you're buying, unless you are intending to keep them entirely separate, which will be harder anyway, you're on a losing battle.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really important point because this goes way beyond the numbers and way beyond the commercial aspect. This is about it's almost like post integration now, but it's if the values and the culture aren't the same, then they're never going to gel. And so,
No,
how can somebody during like the due diligence process spot this and be self-aware that their culture maybe isn't necessarily the same culture as the target business? Is there anything that people can do, or is it like, this culturally is never going to work because we're two totally separate? The way we operate is totally separate things. So, like you said, we either keep this as a separate business, or we don't do the deal because culturally we're never going to be able to fit it together. Is there a solution to that, or is it as cut and dry as I've just said?
there is a solution, but it's hard work because if you've got if you're buying into a team and actually their churn rate is low, actually people stay, they've got a great client base, it's a really strong business, but you believe two completely different things, why would you want to smush one onto the other? Because you're only ever going to end up with two strong cultures diluting and completely losing the value of possibly both businesses.
You said at the start your turnover kind of threshold runs between 30 to 100 million, and maybe at that level people are more sophisticated. But how can you be self-aware as a founder or a business owner in terms of your own culture to recognize that an acquisition maybe isn't a good fit because culturally it's just not there?
Well, I think self-awareness, you've hit the nail on the head, is looking looking at it. You need to look at your own business first, and should be looking at your own business all the time, but it's very hard to do that when you're in the middle of it. But actually, and that's where having a critical friend or employing somebody like me to come in and actually look at the whole structure of the business, not only from the org chart perspective, but also what's working, what isn't working, doing some of that due diligence process. Um, you can use this as a project. You can do this yourself, but it's obviously harder because you can't see what's in front of you.
Hmm.
Uh, you're so used to smell the smell of coffee in your kitchen, you can't smell coffee anymore.
Hmm.
Um, but having that awareness piece and being able to step back it long enough to say, actually, are we operating well enough for me to be able to step out of what we need to do, to step away from the business? Are we operating well enough? Are we on track? Because if we're doing pretty well, then I might have capacity to go and play in somebody else's company. If we're not, then perhaps we're not in the right place unless you're buying somewhere that has all of that stuff sorted, and therefore you can actually adopt some of the good practices from this other company.
Hmm.
As long as you do, one of the horror stories from a good friend who, again, construction company, and we're going back a couple of decades now because I'm old. But he was acquired, and asked the question once the ink was dry. Look, there are loads of companies like us. Why did you buy us? So, well, 50% of it was your plant, your order book, all of the tangible metrics. But half of it was your people, how loyal they are to you, how your reputation within the industry, that people like working with you. 50% of the value of his business was in his people. Unfortunately, what they didn't then do is they merged, but they learnt no lessons from the good business, and both businesses were gone within 18 months.
Wow. So that dovetails
Um,
nicely, I think, into post-acquisition merging and culture integration. Um, to be honest, before this podcast, I haven't really thought about this as much as you've kind of made me think about it. So I didn't really, not dismissed it, but I didn't really think that seriously about it. But what you're saying now makes the success of an acquisition really lies on the people and predominantly the people. So
yeah.
how can people knowing that, how can they make sure or give themselves the best chance of success sort of post acquisition?
So
How does
yeah,
that
I
look?
think yeah, doing the same level of due diligence with people in your own business as well as the business you are looking to acquire or merge with, as you would do in their financial and legals and other governance. People governance is the bit that's overlooked massively.
Hmm.
Making sure that comms is really clear as well. So looking at a founder I was talking to recently was talking about this, and relatively small company. I think there were about 30 of them. So not a huge company, but he said that we made it even worse because it was the ever-growing elephant in the room. I knew we were being acquired, and I didn't have the words to tell everybody, but they didn't know what was going on. And
Mm.
so they started to become really very nervous, very agitated. They started looking at other, where else do I need to, am I going to lose my job, etc. Whereas actually just being able to manage that comms process would have saved an awful lot of time, energy, and probably some of their good people.
Hmm.
But also then looking at, and you said it yourself in terms of self-awareness, looking at how thinly spread the CEO is. What is their role going to be post acquisition? Are you keeping on the other CEO, the other MD, the other head, and are you operating as two completely separate businesses and creating an umbrella? How is that going to work? Or actually, do you need to be able to move yourself over into that other business? And so we're back to, are your team ready for you to leave them? And again, comms is really important, making sure that people know that you still love them, you're still there for them. Particularly in a founder-led business, they are looking to you. And again, founder said this to me. I sometimes feel like I am not only their boss, but their mentor and their parent and their everything else,
Counselor, yeah, yeah.
counselor, all of those things.
Therapist.
That actually making sure that people still know that you're still there for them, but making sure that you're really clear on where you are going to be, where your energy is going to be, knowing yourself well enough to know whether entrepreneurs tend to like variety. They like the challenge. They like change. They will embrace change. Otherwise, they wouldn't do it. They would go and get a normal job.
Hmm.
There's nothing normal about running your own business. Um, are you going to be so overexcited about this new role that actually you will neglect the other business, even if it's for a short period? And how are they going to be able to cope with that? Making those really clear decisions on, are we merging or are we acquiring, and and how does that work? Because often they will say it stay as two separate companies, but the leadership team may merge.
Hmm.
Um, Finance is often the one that gets merged. Finance and HR often get
Yeah.
merged across because that makes economic sense. But again, how is that being communicated? And do those people actually have the capacity to do that? So really looking at it with the same thorough lens that you would do with any other area of that acquisition process.
And what can the sellers, the seller founder, what can they do to their team to help smooth that process? And I suppose as I'm asking this question, I'm thinking, at what point in time do they tell their team, and who do they tell along the way, that
Yeah.
they're selling, or they're thinking of selling, or that they've found a buyer? What kind of things can they be thinking about in that capacity?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that the answer will sometimes depend on the reason for sale. Because some people will set up a business and build a business with the express intention of being able to exit, and they will have done it two or three times over. Some will have to leave because they haven't managed it as well as they can do, and they are having to sell. And so people will already know what's going on, even if they don't know the ins and outs of it. People pick up on stuff pretty quickly. So I think you need to be having those conversations with your leadership team without question, because that's a big strategic decision, and you can't make that decision on your own, even if you are the sole shareholder. It still has to involve the leadership team, because actually, if you're exiting, those are the people who are left behind.
Mhm.
Uh, how would you want to be left behind? Think about how long you want to stay around in the new normal. How long is helpful, and being really clear with the acquiring company what your levels of commitment are. How much are you helping with the transition? Do you take a different role in the company? Are you therefore you're still there? In which case, really spending a good amount of time with the other people in that other team, going away on, a couple of days retreat kind of situation, a couple of days where you actually get to know each other. Because if you don't like each other, that's going to be a really hard process. People are people. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite phrases is relationships are like seatbelts. If you don't click, you'll never feel safe. If you don't click with people, it's really evident, and it starts to leak, and it starts to create real problems in a business. Your team from either business are looking to you as to we're back to that parent role, aren't we? But they're looking
Hmm.
to you as to how to behave. And if you can't behave properly, why would they? So really getting to know the other team, really looking at that as an intentional action rather than something accidental or something to put on the back burner.
Hmm.
Um, in terms of telling the wider team, if you are the one being acquired, the seller, I think you have to be really careful about when you do it, um, and being really clear about what you're telling them. What does this is going to be happening. This is a good and positive thing for these reasons. This is how it's going to impact you. If there are going to be redundancies, be honest about it. Don't pretend everything's going to be fine, because people will assume something is going to go wrong.
Yeah.
So be honest about it, and say, look, this is likely to happen, and there will be redundancies in both businesses. We will go through the due process, and we will make sure that you guys are being communicated with, not to, all the time through this process. But this is what the plan is. This is what the mission is. This is what the vision for the acquisition is. Um, get some time to depending on how what the structure looks like, but actually get some time for both companies to meet each other and talk to each other, and you have the ability to, even if they're separate companies, be able to knowledge share, be able to support each other, in the fullness of time, set up brilliant mentoring schemes between both companies is a fantastic way to be able to integrate. But if the trust is broken early on, not going to happen.
Yeah, I was going to come on to that. I mean, we're sort of drawing to the end now, but trust is a really important one. And is there ways, or are there ways to build trust quickly for a company that's acquiring a target company, or does it take a long period of time, is there anything that they can do reasonably quickly to let the target company staff know that they're in good hands, that that they share similar values or similar missions or whatever it might be? Is there anything you can give people there?
Yes, I mean you've touched on some very good ones. Communication is always going to be key. Without good communication, you can't build trust. And when people feel like they're not being told the whole story, they will make up the other half of it, and immediately trust has disappeared. So as I
Yeah.
say, looking at this, this is who we are, making an effort to get to know the other people, making an effort to integrate whatever needs integrating, but being intentional about it, and recognizing that actually, even on an individual basis, we all need to kind of go through stage gates in order to build trust. We need to understand that the person in front of us is competent and credible, that they know what they're talking about, that they're going to deliver on their promises. But we also need to know that we need to understand who they are, character. Do we get on with those people? We're back to relationships and seatbelts. And
Mm.
as individuals, we don't begin to build trust until all four of those stage gates have been through. It's no different when you multiply that. So tell them what you're going to do, deliver on your promises, show them who you are as a company, show them who you are as individuals. Spend some time with people, properly spend some time with people, and so they know what it is that they are buying into, and get them excited about it. And acquisition is a really exciting thing, even if the reason for it has been that you know either a mismanagement or if there is a negative reason why
Yeah.
that company bought. It's still an exciting thing. This is growth for both companies. But if it feels like they're having smoke blown up their ear ends, it won't work
Disingenuous. Yeah.
completely.